Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Just 3 days ago, in an interview with NBC, Congressman John Lewis of Georgia called Donald Trump illegitimate. Then he followed up by saying he won't attend the inauguration. Well, Trump responded with a series of bellicose tweets. The cable networks went wall to wall with their coverage of all this, and the rest is history, of course, and you've been watching it. This is a fight Democrats started, and they seem to enjoy it so far. Republicans seem to enjoy it too. But what's the greater point of all of this? Will attacks like the one from Congressman Lewis help the Democrats win elections going forward? And it's not an idle question, given that in the past 8 years under Barack Obama, the Democratic Party has lost more than 1,000 office holders nationwide. Joining us now is someone who wants to lead the Democrats into the future, former Fox contributor Jamu Green, who is running for DNC chair. Jamu, thanks for joining us tonight.
Good evening, Tucker.
So you were asked about this over the weekend on Fox and Friends, asked about Congressman Lewis's statement, and you described what happened in November as the alleged election. I think I'm quoting you exactly, the alleged election. By that, did you mean that it's an election that didn't actually take place, or that we should pretend didn't happen, or what did you mean? As someone who wants to lead the Democratic Party, what's your position on that?
Here's, I think, the position of not just Democrats or Republicans, just like I said that morning, Americans. Something happened in this election with Russia. Something happened that was so significant that the Democratic members of Congress that got that classified briefing stormed out of that room. And we may never know what that is if it stays classified, but we all have those questions. And to your opening, Tucker, I don't think anybody enjoys this. I don't think anybody likes this. This is an attack on our democracy. And Donald Trump had an opportunity after he was the president-elect to start to try to heal the wounds from the election. And instead, he chose to take us in a different direction and continue his type of just baseless attacks. But someone like John Lewis, who is the Navy deemed so respected an American that they named a ship after him, to see what Donald Trump is doing on Martin Luther King Day, no one is standing for it. Not Democrats, not Republicans, not anybody who cares about the future of this country.
So he's the one congressman out of 435 you're not allowed to attack. But
that's
my
not
question
what
to
I
you,
said.
though,
That's ridiculous.
my question to you is, though, if you're elected chair of the Democratic Party,
I intend to be.
And you intend to be. Your line to Democrats, when you go across the country to the Jefferson-Jackson dinner or whatever, you're going to say, we would have won that election if only Vladimir Putin, in ways we can't explain or be specific about, hadn't intervened.
No.
So your understanding is Hillary lost because of Putin. I think that's what you just said.
No, that's not what I said. And so don't put words in my mouth, Tucker. There are lots of things the Democratic Party needs to address. Certainly, we have to find better ways of communicating our issues in a way that are going to inspire communities to turn out for us. We have to make sure that we are defending our policies in the same way that Donald Trump was so effective as a communicator. We have to be able to do the same thing, and we will do it, and we'll win by telling the truth, which is the opposite of what we saw from the Republican in the race in 2016. But we have a lot of work to be done. We have to bring young people in. We have to make sure that the infrastructure of the party has the resources that they need. This is not just a one-issue situation, and so I'm not going to play a game and simplify it with you, Tucker.
I don't want you to simplify it. I want you to explain it, because you're running for this. So the first thing you mentioned in that long litany was we need to get the communities out. Now, one community that did not come out for you is white voters. Hillary Clinton won 37% of the white vote. That's the lowest number any Democrat running for president has received in more than 30 years. So it's clearly a massive problem for her. Do you see that as a problem? And what would you do to rectify, to get white voters to vote Democrat again?
Well, I think that there were some strategic mistakes that were made as far as where we were going to communicate, what types of messages were going to be communicated. It's a campaign. I get it. I'm not going to, say that we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need to make better decisions when it comes to how we tell the Democratic Party's story, and to make sure that whether you're a white working class voter or a low income African American voter or middle class working family, all of us, we are going to be harmed drastically harmed by the policies that this administration is clearly intending to put in place.
So
and it is about communication, because they beat us at communication.
Here's a famous and skilled communicator. Her name was Simone Sanders. She was, in fact, the spokeswoman for Bernie Sanders, kind of a big deal. And she said this, and I'm quoting, on CNN, in this November after the election, in my opinion, we don't need white people leading the Democratic Party right now. Do you agree with that?
Look, I think that it is great to have people like Simone's passion and, certainly the young voters that were attracted to Bernie Sanders. They are a part of the Democratic Party, and we need to find ways where everybody feels welcomed. I don't
But wait a second.
agree
I'm sorry. What do you think of that? We don't need white people leading the Democratic Party right now. Do you think she should have said that? Do you think that's an okay thing to say, and do you agree with it?
Well, clearly I'm in the race, Tucker, so I very specifically think we need Jamoo Green leading the Democratic Party right now.
No, don't be silly. Answer the question.
I mean, she said we don't need white people. Race.
Okay, but hold on. This is not a fringe person. This is Simone Sanders, so you know. We don't need white people leading the party. Now, I don't even need to play the thought experiment what would happen if someone on the Republican side said we don't need black people leading the Republican Party. That would be bad, and I would denounce it. Will you denounce that? Is that okay that she said that? And do you agree with her?
Look, just because we have the same hairstyle doesn't mean that I agree with everything that she says. And certainly I think you should have Simone on your show. Ask her. What we need are people who understand the Democratic Party from inside out.
I'm throwing it up really slow for you to hit. I'm asking
you. I don't need you to talk slow to me, Tucker.
No, to throw it up slow, the pitch, so you can hit it. Do you think it's okay to say we don't need white people leading the Democratic Party? And I'm expecting you're going to say that's an appalling thing to say. You can't say that about an entire racial group. Go ahead.
It's not the right message that needs to be out there right now.
But is it wrong to say that? What do you mean not the right message? Is it a good thing to say, or is that an immoral thing? I mean, can you imagine saying that yourself?
It's not what I believe. It's not what I believe. So I don't know why I'm having a conversation with you about what another African-American woman said.
Well, I explained it to you at the beginning.
We don't all think and say the same things.
Of course, I'm not suggesting that. Hillary Clinton, who's not an African-American woman, said in April during the campaign, she said, and I think I'm quoting her, we need to recognize white people, our own privilege, and practice humility. And I thought, well, that's sort of a big generalization. Do you think unemployed machinists in Ohio need to recognize their privilege, or the children of OxyContin addicts in Appalachia need to recognize their privilege? What do you think?
Tucker,
is there a reason white voters abandoning the Democratic Party because maybe they feel attacked by things like that? Is that a crazy thing to say?
Look, Tucker, you're a really smart man, and you understand.
I'm asking obvious questions.
You understand nuance and communication, and you do a lot of critical thinking. Trying to boil that statement down into something that is an attack on a voter in a certain state, that's just ridiculous. I'm tired of these types of conversations, and
really,
frankly,
I'm quoting Hillary Clinton here. I'm not saying taking that out of context. This is a real conversation.
This is what makes people opt out of politics, and part of why we lost is because people weren't inspired. They were disgusted. They were disgusted by the discussion in the 2016 election.
So my asking what Hillary Clinton meant when she said that in public is, quote, part of the reason people are opting out of politics? I'm quoting a candidate you supported and asking you to comment on what she said. And you're accusing me of being divisive. Is that what you're doing?
Do you think you're divisive, Tucker? Do you think you're neither?
I'm asking you,
Which side of it are you on?
If that's a fair thing to say. And my own view, as you can probably tell from my tone, is that's an awful thing to say about people based on their skin color.
It is absolutely fair to acknowledge that there are issues of white privilege out there that concern very specific communities, and they're based in reality. But it is also absolutely fair and something that I think Democrats understand about the pain that all Americans are going through. But I'm not going to sit here and have this conversation that conservatives, Republicans want the Democratic Party to be having and to divide us in this way. Because actually, we are united. We are united in what we need from an economic fairness standpoint. We are united in what we need to protect women's rights, which are coming under attack before this administration even takes a step into the White House. We are united. I'm not going to let you divide us along those lines, because it's not as simple as that, and quite frankly, it's not as stupid as that.
I was quoting Hillary Clinton and asking you what you thought of it, and you started calling me names. And I'm merely trying to get your view, but you retreated immediately into talking points. So let me get specific again and see if you can handle it. Let me see if you can respond. If you can respond to this one. So you're saying you're looking for an economic message that speaks to the needs of the middle class and of working people of all colors. And I applaud you for attempting to find that message. So for 8 years, President Obama has been telling us he wants to lower drug prices because they're too high, right? And that was part of the purpose of Obamacare, but it didn't work, as you know. They're still too high, right? Right. A very fast way to do that would be to re-import drugs from Canada. Donald Trump is calling for this. Why in 8 years did Barack Obama not call for that?
Barack Obama called for so many fixes to Obamacare.
No, that's not to Obamacare.
You understand what Republicans did when that man was first inaugurated. They said on day one they were going to obstruct, and they successfully did in many ways. He and the administration were very clear. There are lots of things we need to still fix with health care. There are lots of problems.
What about re-importing drugs at a cheaper
prices.
price from Canada?
But if you don't have somebody in Congress, if you don't have any leadership on the other side who understands they need to put the American people first instead of trying to destroy government because they didn't like Barack Obama,
this is silly.
That is what is wrong. That is what keeps people disenfranchised.
Look, I don't want to relitigate it, but if you're going to generalizations that aren't true, Democrats held all three branches of government when Obama came into office. Look, I'm just asking. Here you have Donald Trump.
That's transparently false.
Here you have
the obstruction that the Republican Party did to fixing Obamacare, to making sure that we could continue to get health care in this country better, was abysmal.
Do you know what it is?
If you deny it, that's on you. That's on you. You and your therapist can talk about that.
I'm not denying that Republicans tried to stop Barack Obama's agenda. And sometimes it was justified and others it wasn't. But I'm asking in this very I'm asking you a very specific question. And I'm asking you, do you agree with Donald Trump's plan to re-import drugs at a lower price from Canada? American drugs have been sold in Canada at a lower price, bringing them back. The pharmaceutical companies are against it. Obama did not push for it. Trump is now pushing for it. What's your response to that? Are you for that or against it? Simple question.
I haven't seen the exact plan you're talking about, so I'm not going to play this gotcha game. I'm not going to sit here and cheerlead somebody who is refusing to even celebrate Martin Luther King Day and understand that
Why do you always bring it back to race? I'm asking you about economics.
That's where this segment started, Tucker. You're the one who picked the topic. I didn't.
I'm asking you about health care. I'm asking you about lowering drug prices. And Trump, look, I'm not endorsing everything Trump does. I'm just saying here he's doing something that overlaps with what Democrats have wanted to do for a long time, decades. And he's saying, yeah, let's do it. And I'm asking you, are you for it or not? Are you so partisan that you can't just say, yeah, I don't like Trump, but that's a good idea? But you can't. Can you?
I am the last person that is going to cheerlead some small little one-off from Donald Trump, because I am looking at the bigger picture of what this man is about to do to this country and responding to the waves of people who are terrified, who are fearful, the women who are marching the day after the inauguration, and the men who are joining them because they understand we have to resist. We have to resist.
All right, good luck with that. Thanks for joining
back at you, my friend.
I appreciate it. Well, we're less than 100 hours away from Donald Trump becoming the president of the United States. He spent one of his last days as a private citizen at Trump Tower in Manhattan, where he met with Martin Luther King III to talk about civil rights. Fox News reporter Peter Ducey is with us live from Trump Tower tonight. Hey, Peter.
Hey, Tucker, that's right. By the end of the week, the president-elect will live at the White House, but this afternoon he took the golden elevators down to see Martin Luther the King III off. It was the third off, I should say. It was the only time that we saw Mr. Trump today, but his guest, who was here to talk about his dad, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy, came over to microphones to tell reporters what he thinks his dad, Dr. King's message for Mr. Trump would be. And notice when you listen to this that he seems more concerned with big issues than things said in interviews or on social media.
I think my father would be very concerned about the fact that there are 50 or 60 million people living in poverty, and somehow we've got to create the climate for all boats to be lifted. In America, with a multi-trillion-dollar economy, $20 trillion almost, it's insanity that we have poor people in this nation. That's unacceptable.
Meanwhile, the CIA director continues to be involved with something a spy chief wouldn't normally be involved with, and that's a very public dispute. But John Brennan says that he thinks the president-elect needs to be careful what he says about Russia and what he does with Russia, and the president-elect does not appreciate that advice. In fact, Mr. Trump is now raising the possibility that Langley could have leaked the unverified document misidentified as an intel report last week. So the first part of Mr. Trump's latest attack is a Fox News headline that reads this: outgoing CIA Chief John Brennan blasts Pres-elect Trump on Russia threat. Does not fully understand. The president-elect then added this: oh, really? Couldn't do much worse. Just look at Syria, red line, Crimea, Ukraine, and the buildup of Russian nukes. Not good. Was this the leaker of fake news? And the incoming press secretary, Sean Spicer, said today that the president-elect or the president should be able to trust the CIA director, but that after Brennan's public warning, Spicer isn't so sure that Brennan understands Mr. Trump's grasp of the Russia issue and of geopolitical issues overseas. Tucker?
Peter Ducey reporting for us live at Trump Tower Manhattan. Thanks, Aki. Well, it's time now for our Twitter storm. That's the nightly forecast of social media's most powerful weather patterns. Well, Rosie O'Donnell made a novel political suggestion yesterday. She tweeted this: Senator John McCain for emergency interim president. 1 month inauguration pause. Illegitimate president should not be sworn in. God damn it, she said, quote. Well, Aaron Crow responded this way: do you realize that what you're calling for is civil war? Your tweet is dangerous and sad. Brian Davis wrote, I'd like to personally thank you for picking the next president all by yourself. Not. Take a Valium, lady. Milo Dogboss tweeted, oh yeah, that's in the Constitution. Rosie picks random interim POTUS. View from here said, leave God out of it and move to Canada like you said you would. Stop the all caps too. Your screaming is really annoying. Pete Turner wrote, Rosie, I stay hydrated on your tears. And that's tonight's Twitter storm. Up next, Howard Kurtz joins us to talk about the most egregious cases of dumbness in the media this past week. And of course, there are a lot of them. And then Brett Baer joins us in the friend zone to discuss Donald Trump's imminent ascension to the presidency. All that and a whole lot more. Well, I like those graphics. Time now for News Abuse, where we expose the most abominable cases of malpractice in the American press. We're joined by our old friend and an expert on this subject, Howard Kurtz. He's, of course, the host of Sunday morning's Media Buzz program, which we never miss. Howie, great to see you.
Great to be here.
So you've got, I mean, there's so many possible
topics. I had to narrow it down for you, Tucker.
What'd you get?
Okay, Kellyanne Conway, Donald Trump's White House counselor, probably his chief defender on TV, drawing a lot of very personal flack for her role. New York Times columnist Frank Bruni writes of the dark magic of this right-wing operative. And Carl Bernstein, the former Watergate sleuth, had this to say on CNN.
One of the great anonymous sources of our era is Kellyanne Conway. She does it every day, been an anonymous source for the last 10 months, particularly during this campaign when it suits her. It's time to talk about what we do as journalists and what propaganda ministers do.
And Bernstein says she is a propaganda minister.
I love the fact that Carl Bernstein is decrying anonymous sources. The man who wrote the Watergate series is saying, you know what, I just don't like when people speak on background. It just makes me uncomfortable. They meet me in parking garages at night and tell me stuff. I'm against that.
Yeah, I'm totally made my whole career.
It's unbelievable.
But also, I mean, every operative aide advisor from every campaign, Democrat, Republican, they all speak to reporters off the record, and they spin and they deflect and they defend. That's what they do. So why single out Kellyanne Conway as a propaganda minister, unless maybe you don't like her and she's a former Republican?
Well, sure, and plus, I mean, that they're all paid liars, but I think she's much more charming than most, my view.
All right, so now, number two, we have, you talked about the John Lewis story. It was on Friday that MSNBC aired that clip of the congressman saying he doesn't regard Donald Trump as a legitimate president. And on Saturday, New York Times, Washington Post had nothing, zero, not a word about this attack because I guess illegitimate president didn't seem like that big a deal. Now, of course, after Trump counterattacks and criticizes John Lewis, it's the lead story in the New York Times.
Wait, so they never covered it the first time?
No, I went through the papers, nothing in there.
Because but there was no predicate. Well, so the headline, you sent this, Matt, I just love it. Trump sets off backlash with attack on civil rights icon. Not on elected official or congressman or politician, but civil rights icon. He's the one, and he is a civil rights icon, but he was acting not in his capacity as such, but as a member of Congress. So can't you call him that?
The print edition says blacks perceive a callous rival in Trump. So, you know, look, we can certainly debate whether Donald Trump goes too far when he goes after whether it's John Lewis or Alec Baldwin or Meryl Streep, right? But when you pick up the story sort of at round two, after the guy's been attacked, and you make his counterattack, his counterpunch the story, that seems a little unbalanced.
With no predicate at all.
Yeah, and by the way, if a veteran Republican congressman had said, I don't consider Barack Obama in 2009 to be the legitimate president, do you think it would have taken more than a day for the papers to go crazy?
Probably not.
All right. Now, this is the worst one of all, in my view, because Jeff Sessions, at his Senate confirmation hearing as Attorney General, brought his extended family, very common thing for nominees to do. Ira Madison III, he's an MTV writer, tweeted the following, and put it up on the screen. Sessions, sir, kindly return this Asian baby to the Toys R Us store you stole her from. Another tweet, he said, why is she a prop? This is the senator's young granddaughter.
Yeah.
She's a prop because he doesn't like Sessions' positions politically.
What's so creepy is that he saw her as an Asian baby rather than just a baby.
Rather than just a baby, right.
Right, it's a baby.
Yeah.
And a cute baby, actually.
Took the guy, very cute baby. Took the guy 2 days to apologize, and, MTV didn't do anything to him, because this is just, I guess, in that crowd. Well, fine, we'll just take a shot at the family. That seems fair, doesn't it?
Wait, they didn't even censure him or
They just said, well,
him?
he speaks for himself. No action whatsoever. And a couple days later, he did say, perhaps he had gone too far. And I mean, we talk about not bringing the kids of politicians into it. How about young grandchildren? It's just so below the belt.
Are you saying, since you cover this every day, news organizations institute policies where they rein in tweets from their employees?
Well, there ought to be some standards if you're not going to kind of spew hatred, and that's what I think this is.
And there are a lot of examples of this, but are you seeing, like, the New York Times, Washington Post, MTV say you can't tweet?
No, nobody says you can't tweet, but you aren't supposed to do, especially if you cover politics, you aren't supposed to say things on Twitter that show you to be completely, totally biased. There's a lot of snark, and we could talk about that in a future segment, but this one I just thought, bringing in the grandchild, come on.
It's ridiculous. Howard Kurtz, host of Media Buzz.
Good to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks a lot. Well, Bob Beckel is back. In case you missed it at 5, our old friend rejoined the 5 today after an absence of nearly 2 years. You can catch him weeknights, 5 p.m. Eastern. Here's a highlight from his first day back.
I'll tell you something. I woke up, I had 3 back operations, right? So I wake up out of the fog, they give you the anesthesia. And I had this horrible dream that Donald Trump got elected. And then I woke up and I said, it's true.
I brought something for you on that note. We can put this on your, in the break, we'll put it on your suspenders.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we brought you back here just to rub that in, just so you know.
Man, I worked with Beckel 20 years ago at another network. Good guy. Great to have you back, Bob. Well, up ahead, former Black Panther Mason Weaver once hated whites so much he dumped his girlfriend for the crime of having a white dog. Well, now he's blasting John Lewis for his anti-Trump boycott. He joins us next to explain. Well, Congressman John Lewis of Georgia is being cast as the undisputed champion of Black America, standing in opposition to Donald Trump on behalf of all African Americans. But Lewis does not speak for all African Americans. Mason Weaver used to be a Black Panther, for example. He now says Lewis is a, quote, civil rights turncoat who's collaborating with the Democratic Party to oppress Black America. Mr. Weaver joins us now to explain what he means. Mr. Weaver, thanks for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. Really, my pleasure.
So what did you mean by that?
Well, in the early 70s and late 60s, we were demonstrating and protesting for the right to compete as adult citizens in America. We were not demonstrating to be taken care of better. Now, Congressman Lewis, he marched across the Pettus Bridge, and they beat him and ran over him. But those were Democrats. It was Democrat. George Wallace stood in the schoolhouse yard. It was Democrats, Bull Connors, that oppressed folks. It was Democrats that voted for the litmus test called the literacy test and the poll tax. He was fighting Democrats. But after they beat his behind on that bridge and ran over him and stomped him on the ground, he got up and turned and joined them. He joined the oppressors and became a stooge for them, where he was now sitting and presiding over the destruction of the Black community, the destruction of the Black men, the destruction of the Black woman with drugs and gangs. He has presided over the worst school system in the world, where Black people are learning only to be gang prep. So I'm outraged that the demonstration that he had early in his life has turned into a subjugation of his rights and authority as a Black leader.
So when you say he's presided over, are you speaking of his congressional district?
Not just his congressional district, but the Congressional Communist Black Caucus that has every district they own and control is a ghetto hellhole. It's a place that no one wants to go to. They're in control of every inner city school system, every inner city police, every inner city jail. They have produced nothing but drugs and misery. Black-owned businesses, black-owned housing has been reduced. They have presided over the destruction of black people. They should be ashamed of themselves, and I don't understand why any black person could be a Democrat.
Huh. Interesting. So you believe that John Lewis, when he gets up and says anything, is already discredited because of what he's failed to do since the civil rights era?
He has done nothing. John Lewis, bless his heart, it took courage to do what he did in early life. But what he has done now, he has turned himself to his enemy, like a little girl being beaten by daddy and joins daddy, like an abused woman beaten by her husband, she joins the husband. He has joined the enemy. He has joined the oppressor. And what he should do, if you're a real man, John Lewis, if you're a real hero, you stand up tomorrow morning and you look at the American people and you apologize. You have led them through decades of hell. You should apologize, say you made a mistake, say that you tried to work with them. But the Democratic Party has always been the party of abuse, always been the party of the Klan, the party that went to war to keep slaves, the party that's always been the destruction of black people. Mr. Lewis, you have presided over the destruction of black America, and you owe us an apology. And matter of fact, you're more concerned, he's more concerned about Trump being the illegitimate president, but John Lewis is the illegitimate congressman.
So presumably you don't believe that John Lewis is doing this on purpose, or that other members of the Congressional Black Caucus are doing this on purpose, do you?
That's why I love you so much, Tucker. You're so kind, you're so genuine, but I know that you hate BS. So I'm going to tell you, all I've seen that he has gotten enriched and his people have gotten poor. The Black Caucus has gotten more power and influence, and the black people that presiding over has gotten poor. More drugs, more gangs, less business, less home ownership, less education, more jail, more drugs. Now, if you did that in your job, you'll be fired. If you did that in any place else, you'll be fired. The worse black people are, the poorer we are, the stronger the Congressional Black Caucus is, the more powerful Democrats are, the worse off black people are. So I'm just saying, as a citizen of America, looking around my country, I'm saying that every place you find black people and Democrats, you find poverty. Now, wait for someone to say where I'm wrong. You find disgrace, you find degradation, you find no jobs, you find a place that is utterly unlivable. That's his legacy.
Huh. Mason Weaver, not a mincer of words. Thanks for joining us tonight with your perspective.
Stay right. Stay right. We got to just stay right. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, up next, a former CIA officer is about to wind up in an Italian prison, maybe within hours of right now, and the Obama administration is doing nothing to save her. That's not an exaggeration. She's going to join us in just a minute from Portugal. She's about to be extradited to explain what's happening. And then Brett Baird joins us in the Friend Zone with a preview of the inauguration. Well, it's hard to believe this next story is true, but it is. We checked. In just a few hours, an American who loyally served her country is scheduled to be shipped to Italy to go to prison. Sabrina D'Souza is a former State Department employee who also served as an undercover CIA officer. Well, that got her in trouble with Italian authorities several years ago, who accused her of assisting in the kidnapping of a radical Islamic cleric called Abu Ammar. Italy, the nation that once jailed seismologists for not predicting an earthquake, and they actually did that, has handled D'Souza very roughly. She was convicted of kidnapping in absentia without being present to defend herself, and now she faces imminent extradition from Portugal to serve a 4-year prison sentence in Italy. President Obama has granted, meanwhile, 148 pardons and commuted 1,176 sentences, mostly for drug offenses. But so far, he's done nothing at all that we know of to assist D'Souza, who served this country. Well, D'Souza joins us now via Skype from Portugal, where it's close to 3 a.m. Thank you for coming on tonight. I appreciate it. Is there anything about the intro that I just read that is false? You are right on the cusp of being extradited. Is that correct?
That's correct. Starting tomorrow, I have no idea what's going to happen and the conditions under which I'll be once I get to Italy.
It's horrifying. And considering you've already been convicted in absentia, it doesn't look good, and you're facing a prison term. So this all stems from the kidnapping last decade of this man, Abu Ammar. Now, you were skiing with your son on a ski vacation, a school holiday, when the kidnapping took place. But that decision was not made by you in any case, was it?
Oh, absolutely not. And none of us had any input into the decision. The narrative at the time was Abu Ammar was a dangerous terrorist and had to be taken off the streets of Milan. As it turned out, a year after he was in Egypt, where he was transported, he was set free for lack of prosecutable evidence against him.
So you've been convicted in an Italian court for this, but your supervisors who made that decision back in Washington or Langley or back in the United States are free to travel to Europe. They've not been convicted. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the reason we have state secrets and GLOMAR and all of this is to make sure that they remain that way.
Yes. So the Obama administration, Fox reached out to the State Department to ask, what are you doing to help your former employee? And they said this, quote, the Department of State takes its obligation to assist U.S. citizens overseas seriously. And yet it doesn't seem like they're taking your case seriously at all, are they?
Well, the most they've done, the U.S. Embassy in Portugal reached out to me to process me for this extradition, make sure my travel documents are up to date and sign the privacy waiver. And to me, the notion itself is a little bit surreal, right? Considering I'm not going as a typical American citizen who's been convicted of a crime, like drugs or something like that. And this was an activity that was sanctioned right all the way up to the National Security Council.
So why do you, presumably President Obama could get on the phone and say, we have military installations in Italy. We do a lot of business with Italy. You may not do this. How's that sound? Has he done anything like that you're aware of?
No, I'm not aware of anything like that. And I think one thing, Tucker, is that this entire fallout from this entire rendition has been handled by the CIA completely. The CIA has decided what goes to Congress, what Congress is told, what they're not told, who gets a pardon, who doesn't, etc. So, I don't know how much the president could have weighed in if the director, Brennan, for example, said, well, this is the way we're going to proceed with this particular case or the whole case itself. And I think a large part of this as well is because of the Italian intelligence services. So many of them were convicted. In fact, one of them is the chief of the Italian intelligence service. And this is kind of also quite outrageous for the Italians to have the chief resign, be convicted over an ill-conceived operation that had little intelligence value.
Yes. You must feel betrayed. I feel betrayed as an American just watching you. What do you hope that the newly installed President Trump will do for you?
Well, I think I'm a little bit optimistic over there just because I've had a very strong advocate in Congressman Pete Hoekstra. And I think one of the things that President-elect Trump or the administration can do is really make sure that we stop this precedent of U.S. diplomats, U.S. military and intelligence officers being convicted by foreign courts. This case requires a proper investigation and accountability, and that needs to take place in Washington, not in a foreign court. So I'm hoping this is one thing that the new administration does look into.
If the U.S. government can't even defend its own CIA officers, then we're lost. Sabrina, good luck. I know you're possibly on your way to jail in a few hours. We're going to stay on your story. Good luck to you. Godspeed.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tucker, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Well, according to a Pew survey, atheism has surged in this country in popularity over the past 8 years during Barack Obama's presidency. In 2007, for example, 16% of Americans identified as atheist, agnostic, or otherwise unattached to a church. Well, today, 23% identify as such. It's a big change. Of course, just because America is less churched doesn't make it less religious. The religious impulse is innate. It's in all of us. We're born with it, and it will find an outlet somehow. It always does. And that may explain our increasingly turbulent politics. We have Bernie Sanders instead of baptisms, abortion instead of absolution, Trump instead of the Trinity. Some of us may no longer go with God, but we're happy to say, I'm with her instead. That might explain it. Well, up ahead, we bring you something brand new. Lindsay Lohan, ladies and gentlemen, may have cast her lot with a new religion. She's not an atheist, apparently. And then Bret Baier, live and in person in the Friend Zone. Time now for the happy, non-confrontational part of the show, the Friend Zone. We invite one of our friends from within the building here at Fox onto the show. Tonight we're joined by an actual friend, Fox News chief political anchor Bret Baier, host of Special Report. He's also going to be hosting our coverage of the inauguration from start to finish for like 27 hours in a row. How long are you going to be on the set?
11 to 5 with Martha MacCallum, which is great. We're going to have fun. We are positioned well, right on the mall, looking up at the Capitol. And we'll have.
Can you get up during that time? I've always wondered.
I hope so.
That's a long time. Aren't you worried that you're going to lose focus? I could not stay focused for 6 hours.
No, listen, election night prepares you for that long stint. And, I think you have a break every now and then, but got the Fox News catheter? No, I'm just kidding.
You're going to need it.
It's going to be great coverage, though. It's going to be so much to focus on, let alone the magnitude of the moment.
Yes.
I mean, the fact that we are at this point, from the escalator down in July of 2015
yes.
in Trump Tower to the first debate in August in Cleveland, and that 26 million people that tuned in, and then along the way that we would ever get to this moment. And now the country has chosen, and the 45th President of the United States is going to put his hand on that Bible and give a speech that I think a lot of people are going to be paying attention to.
It is a different country from the one it was even a year and a half ago. I hate even to say this out loud, but it's on the minds of everyone of us who lives in the District of Columbia. Are you concerned about disorder at all?
Yeah. I think there will be a significant protest element, and perhaps it's more this time than last or recent memory. I think security is prepared. I think they've been doing tests, Secret Service, Homeland Security. There's even National Guardsmen that will be on the streets. But it'll be significant, and you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what you don't know. They're preparing for a lot of different possibilities, and I think there's going to be some efforts to disrupt not only the moment and the speech, but probably the balls afterwards.
Yeah, we'll be at one of those. You're anchoring with Martha MacCallum.
Yeah, who had a great inaugural run.
Of course she did.
Who thought
you
she
can't
wouldn't.
find a person who doesn't love Martha MacCallum.
That's
she
true.
is just the best. Have you anchored with her before?
I have. In fact, we anchored one of the primary nights together, and she's just fantastic. She's just a real pro and knows a ton every day, alongside Bill, and now with 100 Days, which is really a great show. I watched the inaugural run tonight.
I sat in my office. So what do you do to prepare for 6 hours live on TV?
Well, you look at a lot of, we have the brain room here that produces this huge binder of information that is very helpful as far as stats and figures and info. But you really I think about big moments in history. And I'm going to be looking really at that speech. We're hearing that the president-elect has a very active role in the forming of this speech, and maybe even writing a big portion of it. We'll see how that develops. Hope to hear more about what's going to be in there. But the message is going to be one, I think, of unity. In the midst of all of this Twitter back and forth and everything we're hearing about who's not showing up, I think there will be a coming together message that he's going to try to get through.
You just wrote a book on Eisenhower. It just came out. You're doing a reading this weekend in Washington, I think. Did Eisenhower write his own stuff?
He did. He was an amazing writer and editor. He was often criticized in the press for being kind of halting in his answers at news conferences. He was, by the way, the first president to put a news conference live on air. He's the first one that put transcripts from news conferences into the record. Before that, reporters could ask questions, but they could never quote a president directly. But he did write speeches, and he worked on that final farewell address for almost 2 years, 21 drafts.
It was worth it because people still quote it.
They do.
To this day. Bret Baier, on the set, drinking no liquids all morning.
Yes.
As you cover the inauguration. We'll see you Friday. Thank you, Bret.
I like this friend zone.
It's nice, man.
Very
no hard
nice.
questions. This is the easy part of the quiz.
Thank you,
Great to see you. Coming up, we bring you something for those of you who love celebrity gossip, something we don't have a lot of on this show. This is actually worth it, so stay tuned. Well, here's something new. Tabloid star Lindsay Lohan may be famous for her trips to rehab, and she is, but her next pilgrimage may be to Mecca instead of a clinic in Santa Monica. On Monday, Lohan deleted all of her Instagram posts, by the way, that's a big deal in Hollywood, and upgraded her bio to read Akalam Salam, an Arabic phrase meaning peace be upon you, assuming I'm pronouncing it correctly. Lohan lives, by the way, in the United Arab Emirates. She's been spotted wearing a headscarf, and she even carried a Quran around in 2015. So many of the fans she somehow still possesses are speculating she has converted to Islam. Muslims around the world announced support for her online, but her mother says she's simply doing a social media cleanse. Well, that's about it for us tonight. Tune in every night at 9 to the show that is the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Set your DVR and stay tuned for Sean. He's next.